Right, so lots to talk about today. Let's get straight to it with Jason Reid, who is from Young Voices UK. Jason's been having a look at the papers for us today. Jason, you're very welcome to Talk TV. How are you doing?
Good morning, Peter. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great to see you. Tell us about Britain's facing up to £1,000 for using hose pipes as water companies are imposing the ban. It seems that there's rain all the time until there isn't, and then there's a hosepipe ban.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that it seems we're going to keep reading about now. Southern Water is the company that's in the story that has said you can be fined up to £1,000 if you wash your car or you water your garden using a hose pipe. This is, of course, because we're having one of the driest summers that we've ever had on record in this country, and so there are concerns about water shortages, and people don't want the companies don't want people using hose pipes and unnecessarily wasting water. Now, I'm not sure how to feel about this, because there are lots of countries around the world who have these kinds of temperatures in summer every year. And even if this does become a bit more frequent, a bit more common for us because of climate change now, it does seem a bit like we should have better infrastructure, we should have better water supply, we should have a bit more ability to deal with these kind of temperatures, which, yes, they've been high, but they've not been astronomical. There's people go on holiday to Spain and to Greece and other countries every year and experience these kinds of temperatures, and it feels like we should be able to deal with it. It reminds me also of the lack of air conditioning in this country. So many buildings, it's not the norm for homes in this country to have air conditioning. I think it really should be, even if we only use it for a few days a year. Maybe that would help stave off some of this panic that we've seen, nanny statists saying, goodness me, we need to broadcast messages like drink water and wear a hat all day, every day while we have a heat wave.
You can slightly understand that, Jason, I suppose. I mean, look, I do find it a bit patronising when someone says carry a bottle of water when you're on the train or something like that. But at the same time, if something goes even slightly wrong, if it's a bit warm for a few days, we're dealing with a hosepipe ban. It does seem. I don't want you to be alarmist about this, but it does sometimes. People just say to me, why does nothing work in this country? And I've had my own battles with Virgin Broadband this morning. I got a huge reaction. Someone's asking about the Twitter. It's at TalkTV or at Peter Cardwell. You can send it through. And lots of people ringing in and lots of tweets and so on to read out after we do this paper review. But there is a growing thought within our viewers and listeners, at least, in Britain, why does nothing work?
It's a good point, and obviously there are two separate issues here. When it comes to individuals and their lifestyle choices, such as drinking water and using sunscreen, that's where we really don't need nanny statists talking down to us. When there's something broader about infrastructure, such as a water system that is obviously out of the control of people like you and me, then we have to, sometimes it's necessary to be told, don't use your hose pipes. But the fact that we've got to that point where we can't use hose pipes just in case the country runs out of water seems a bit ridiculous. And you're absolutely right. It seems sometimes like nothing works in this country. And I think the burden needs to be on water companies to do a better job of avoiding this situation to begin with, because it does seem a little bit silly that people are being fined for using a hose pipe. One of the things that's listed by Southern Water that you definitely shouldn't use a hosepipe for is filling a swimming pool. Now, I imagine if you're lucky enough to have a swimming pool on your property, then this is exactly the reason why you've got a swimming pool, for days like this, for heat waves, and you want to be able to fill it up. Otherwise, what was the point of having the swimming pool in the first place? It does seem a little bit silly that it's become an offence that you have to pay £1,000 for.
I do worry about the rights of people who own swimming pools. I mean, this is a major issue for me, Jason, as I know it is for you as well.
Of course.
Jason, we're going to come back to you after the break. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts on a possible hosepipe ban and loads this morning. Right, back to Jason Reid, political commentator. Jason, thank you for waiting patiently. Who will speak up for white working class boys who've become Britain's new oppressed minority, according to the Daily Mail? Why is this?
Yeah, this is a quite remarkable story that develops on lots of research that's come out in this area from educational experts in the last few years, suggesting that when you look at educational results, when you look at the amount of kids who get into university and their exam results and things like that, quite often the worst performing group now is white working class boys. And it just draws attention to how little heed we pay to class in this country, especially when it comes to education. I think this is something that it's become a cliche now, but the government's levelling up agenda, or Northern Powerhouse, or whatever you want to call it, this is the kind of issue it needs to be addressing and focusing on. It needs to be giving everyone, wherever they happen to be in the country, whether you're in the countryside or in an inner city, the resources you need to do well in life.
But that's what the government says it wants to do, Jason.
It says it wants to, but we haven't seen a huge amount of action in this area. Because as we've seen, and as the Daily Mail reports today, the results just keep going, the gap just keeps widening between white working class boys and pretty much every other group in society. We need to see a bit more, just a fairer allocation of resources, I think. It is as simple as that, to give the resources that are needed to schools that are in deprived areas, so that you don't have this gap widening between different parts of British society.
Well, presumably if they're white working class boys, they're white working class girls as well. Why are they doing better than the boys, does this article reveal? Does this tell us?
That's a really good point, and there isn't really, as far as I can see, a clear answer to that, but it's part of a much wider trend that girls do seem to be performing quite consistently better than boys across the education system at all different ages when it comes to exam results. I think it's even true that girls or women in the early part of their careers, in their 20s, quite often earn more than men in the same job for the same work. And so we're seeing a lot of social change going on. We're seeing the gender pay gap is becoming an issue that is evolving in this very interesting way that is changing quite dramatically as the generations progress. And it's going to be something that's really interesting to monitor as it continues and as millennials and Generation Z grow up and start to enter and progress through the workforce, as to whether whether this trend continues and whether there's anything we can do about it, or indeed we should do about it.
We've talked a lot about broken Britain today, about things not working. Obviously, so many people filling up their cars are feeling that they are being ripped off at the pumps. Asda has apparently slashed the price of petrol. It's 12p a litre cheaper than average. And this is the background of real passengers brace for travel chaos today. Services shut, but roads gridlocked as well. So even if you're getting cheaper petrol from Asda, you're often sitting in traffic.
Exactly right. Yes, the transport systems in this country, wherever you look, I mean, as you've been saying so far, broken Britain, wherever you look, whether it's water, whether it's phone companies, nothing seems to be working. But it's worth saying this is really good news about petrol prices, because petrol prices, as we know, have been absolutely astronomical, and there's no sign they're going to come down anytime soon. But we've heard a lot about the companies that are actually selling the petrol, who are running the pumps, and in particular supermarket chains, not passing on discounts or cuts or whatever cost reductions come their way to consumers, and companies making too much profit. But what's happened with Asda, and what seems to be happening with others as well, is exactly what's supposed to happen in the free market, is competition. That there have been news stories about companies not passing on reductions to customers, and now that one supermarket chain has done this, there will be a lot of pressure on others to do the same as well. And so it's going to go a little bit further, hopefully, to lessening the pressure on people's wallets in the coming weeks and months. But of course, all of this is not a long-term solution. It's a sticking plaster on a gunshot wound. We need something a lot more drastic. We need a proper energy strategy, proper fuel strategy, to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again in the future. And we need some quite, in my opinion, quite radical and urgent intervention from the government in terms of the tax that we all pay on our fuel, which is a huge proportion of our fuel bills, to put those aside for the time that we have this crisis, so that people aren't struggling to fill up their cars.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you very, very much indeed. That's Jason Reid, political commentator there. Thank you very much indeed for your paper review. Lots to chew on.